things could change in a moment's notice.
You can't be afraid.
We take as long as we need to get the job done properly.
We're there when it's the worst possible day. Nothing could get worse at that moment. A lot of people, even inside the department, they really don't understand what we do, and they really don't get how complex it can be.
Looking at print after print after print.
And then we do acid or base extractions.
What I'm doing right now is a control. If a color change occurs, then that means blood is possibly present.
To start as a Tech 1, you need, usually it's biology, chemistry, or physics. But then some of us have masters as well.
People typically think of being a male-dominated field.
I'll be like, well, surprised, there actually are, most of us are women.
There's women in leadership who got your back, and we're all in this together.
I tell people, especially when they're first coming on, if you don't care about people, then you should find another job.
And I just treat every case as if I would want someone to treat it for me.
Inside the Baltimore City Police Department's forensic unit are the unsung heroes on the war on crime. They're scientists, and they're almost exclusively women. They're breaking the glass ceiling in the STEM field, which is dominated by men. First, we introduce you to the crime scene technicians who are responding to the violence playing out day and night on city streets. In a city that sees more than 300 homicides a year and even more shootings,
We don't stop, so it's 24 hours a day. It goes on and on.
crime scenes play out on city blocks on a daily, sometimes even hourly basis.
A couple weeks ago, we had like 3 shootings in a matter of minutes.
And it's within minutes the crime scene technicians of the Baltimore Police Department arrive to secure the evidence.
We're responsible for the documentation, the preservation, and the collection of evidence from crime scenes.
Denise Caldwell is the Deputy Director of Crime Scene Sciences.
And I saw this posting and said crime lab technician. And honestly, I didn't really understand what that was.
She's been on the job for 21 years.
It's one of the most realistic jobs you will ever, you can ever be exposed to.
She leads the unit of 60 civilians, and majority of them are women.
I think the last count I did, we had about 12 guys. Since I've been here, this unit has doubled.
Ashley Cowan is one of them.
But I oftentimes have people bring that up. I'll be at crime scenes and they'll remark that like they didn't know women did this job. And I'll be like, well, surprised, there actually are, most of us are women. And most of us, at least for the requirement for the position, have at least a bachelor's in a science.
Cowan started in biology and has a master's in forensic science.
We are civilian. We do not carry firearms.
On the job for 4 years in Baltimore, no 2 days are the same.
Well, they've dispatched it so far as a 300 block of North Fulton.
On this hot June day, we rode along with her
But I just look for the flashing lights. Crime scene tape.
after a call came in for a shooting.
5827. I'm 1023 on North Fulton. As you can see, there's an officer standing by some orange cones. So that's likely the evidence of interest.
The evidence, shell casings. The scene spanning several city blocks.
We take as long as we need to get the job done properly.
Cowan couldn't take our camera across the crime scene tape as she spent hours collecting evidence and swabbing blood on clothing, cars, and the sidewalk. 2 other women technicians joined her to help cover the extensive scene, which ultimately ended up as a homicide. A 30-year-old man killed in broad daylight on a Wednesday afternoon.
So you're like, geez, I really would like to do my part into figuring out, who did this.
Caldwell says processing a scene for evidence is methodical work that takes impeccable attention to detail.
There's firearms evidence, cigarette butts, clothing, baseball caps, t-shirts, cups, bottles, anything that would tie individuals to that scene.
But the evidence isn't always in plain sight.
It could be something that the detective or officer didn't advise you of, but you're just like, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. And it's like, where did that grape soda can come from? Or where did that Sprite can come from? And they like, dang, I didn't even notice it. I said, well, we're gonna pick it up.
Caldwell says it takes more than just a good eye.
You're dealing with people on the worst days of their life.
It takes compassion.
If you don't care about people, then you should find another job.
Because this job doesn't come with a whole lot of prestige.
We're just looking for the truth. We're not worried about, oh, they did it, who done it. We're worried about what the evidence says and the truth in the matter.
But it can offer a whole lot of fulfillment.
You're doing your small part to contribute to someone's closure, to either convict someone or exonerate them.
Once the evidence is collected, it's brought back here to the forensic unit to be processed in one of the 4 labs. This is the Latent Fingerprints Lab, where the prints are analyzed, and you'll find there's a lot more than meets the eye. Not long after the sound of gunshots echo through Baltimore City, a group of strong women head into Baltimore's mean streets.
We are civilian. We do not carry firearms.
But are armed with science. Hidden behind the crime scene tape, their eagle eyes are crucial to catching criminals.
I don't know exactly why, but it is mostly women.
It's mostly women not only collecting the evidence from crime scenes, but processing it back in the labs at the Baltimore Police Department.
It does feel like we're sort of taking over this discipline.
Yet across the country, men continue to dominate science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM jobs. While census data shows women are making gains, they're still vastly underrepresented.
There's so few disciplines where women are the majority.
Less than 30% make up the STEM workforce.
My labs are latent prints, firearms, DNA, screening, and drug chemistry.
Director of Forensic Laboratories,
Try to clear the way so they can do good work.
Brena Della Rocco, is one of them.
So it's like the coolest little combination where like women are sort of like the thing that you look to as like, oh, in this place, women are the ones that are the like leaders.
It's a sweet spot that Della Rocco admits comes with challenges.
I get mansplained a lot.
Della Rocco started on the streets as a crime scene technician.
Just when you think you've seen it all, then you get that next call, and then you're like, well, okay.
Now, she's in charge of all the department's laboratories.
Baltimore has its challenges, obviously, with crime, and so this is a super powerful way where, you know, juries can feel good about objective evidence rather than, you know, having like conflicting feelings about how they feel about police. They can kind of look at forensics and say, like, they're not police, because we're not. We're civilians and we're scientists.
Dina Freeman
We do the comparisons here.
is a forensic scientist who specializes in analyzing fingerprints.
It is our responsibility in this unit to first kind of examine the print, determine if it's suitable, to even compare, and then to possibly run it through the APHIS system.
That's the system which matches prints against a database of known and unknown prints.
What kind of surface did it come off of? Was it a porous surface? Was it a non-porous surface? Was it wet? Was it possibly dirty? So there's all sorts of things, plus the type of movement. Did maybe the person twist their finger when they put it down, or were they pushing really hard?
More often than not, prints are coming off things from a crime scene, like cars, cups, doors, light switches, and other random objects.
Yeah, each of these is a case.
To Freeman, it's a high-stakes game of hide and seek.
Finding those little details and being able to pick up on that little stuff that a lot of other people may not be able to do.
And it may just be that strong attention to detail that draws so many women to forensics.
Approximately 12 of us in this unit, and 2 are male. So it's mostly female in here.
Freeman says as a mother of 3 daughters, it's a role she doesn't take lightly. Inspired by her own colleagues, she hopes they all send a message to little girls.
To be able to come in and work alongside some of the most amazing, brilliant women is an honor that I will cherish forever.
That science doesn't have to be a man's world. The team of women here in the DNA serology lab analyzed DNA from crime scenes that could link back to a suspect and bring closure to families across the city. The heart of crime solving often lies in the little things left behind.
DNA, serology, the biology unit, we definitely play a very critical and important role in like the entire process.
Things like blood and saliva
If a color change occurs, then that means blood is possibly present.
that can provide indisputable evidence linking a suspect back to the scene of a crime.
Most all of our samples come from either crime scenes or samples that we get off the victim's body from the medical examiner's office, clothing, just could be anything, but typically we get swabs.
Taylor Hall is a forensic scientist in the DNA serology lab.
Every time I come in here with a clear head, I do my best. I follow all of our protocols to make sure that I'm doing my job properly, and I just treat every case as if I would want someone to treat it for me.
She determines if samples brought to her are suitable for DNA analysis.
Blood is present, then we can get a DNA profile from that. and I will forward that to the DNA analyst to do tech work and DNA analysis on.
We actually sit the plate here.
Holly Porter
And it takes longer than what it looks like on TV.
is one of the many female analysts.
I actually receive the DNA most of the time, the sample when it's in a nice cutting in a tube.
She begins by adding chemicals and separating DNA from the evidence.
We then make a lot of copies of that DNA, sort of like a photocopier, so that we can kind of ramp it up and we have more to work with.
Best case scenario, a nice single genetic profile.
All for different locations of DNA.
But that's rarely the case.
But we often get DNA samples that result in mixtures where we have DNA from more than one person. And so we have to do more work to try to tease out the information that we have there. And we may even have to use some of the softwares that are out, which you can kind of think of as genetic calculators, to assist us.
A suitable sample can be entered into CODIS, the national DNA database, where hopefully they get a hit. And that can lead to a major break in a case.
That way you know your reagents are working.
It's objective evidence detectives rely on and juries can trust.
You see a lot more women in STEM fields in general.
And it's a female force driving the work in this lab.
But just being able to see other intelligent women who are into their careers and also who are able to have their personal lives and, you know, kind of balance it and maintain, still maintain positivity while accomplishing their goals. It's very, very encouraging.
I just absolutely love it. I think it's a super interesting science.
Especially for young people like Annabelle Fry.
Every single case goes through every different unit, so you get to see all of the different aspects play together, and that's really cool.
Whose internship in the forensics department has opened her eyes to all the opportunities for women in STEM.
I don't want to say nurturing because that sounds so cliche, but they're really good about making sure that you see every part of the process.
And not to say men aren't doing the job as well.
It's a women-driven science.
Andrew Van Pelt is the unit's supervisor.
They're all extremely smart. They all have great experience and great educational background, and they're just always super professional and helpful to me every single day.
It's a level playing field where everyone is just doing their part to solve crime.
Gun violence is driving the crime crisis in Baltimore. For the past 6 years, there have been more than 300 homicides and even more non-fatal shootings. And again this year, we're on track to surpass that number. So it's no surprise a lot of guns are brought here to the firearms unit every day. But the female scientists don't just spend the day shooting guns here in the range. They spend a lot of time at the microscope.
Driving the crime crisis in Baltimore City. Thousands of guns are recovered by police every year.
It's way too much.
And far too often, it's not until after they've been used to commit a violent crime.
We'd like to see less, but that's Baltimore City.
Once they're recovered,
the water will come on.
They're brought here.
This is the long range where we shoot larger caliber handguns, firearms, shotguns.
To the Baltimore Police Department's Forensics Firearms Lab. Forensic scientist Jennifer Ingridson says first they're test fired.
Some guns we need to compare to cartridge cases or bullets that are recovered from scenes. So we'll come in here, we'll shoot the guns. Like I said, if we don't need bullets to compare to, we'll just get the cartridge cases and we can compare them on the microscope to see if they were fired with that gun or with a different gun.
In the range this day.
Firearms are pretty cool.
Forensic scientist Zoe Crone.
I really just fell in love with it because it's just like solving one big puzzle, right?
Crone has always had a passion for forensics. She started on the streets as a crime scene technician before moving to the firearms lab, where she says hundreds of guns come in every month.
Polymer 80s, which are the ghost guns. And then aside from that, Glocks are always very popular. You got your Smith & Wessons that are very popular, and Taurus is also a very popular gun brand that we're seeing.
The types of guns coming in have changed over the last decade.
They think we just shoot guns and watch them go bang.
Daniel Lamont says so have the scientists.
When I started with the department, at least with the lab, it was very male dominated. And that has changed over the years, especially in firearms. It's very different compared to what it was just 10 years ago in this unit.
Today, the unit is mostly women.
I feel I feel good. It feels empowering to see so many women in the field.
And they're much more than just girls with guns.
It's kind of a misnomer that that's all you do is shoot guns all day.
There is a lot of microscope work that is involved with this, which a lot of people don't think about.
Work that involves closely examining bullets and cartridge casings.
There are striations and impressions that are left on both cartridge cases and bullets.
And those details can help lead to a conviction.
You're able to link crimes together, hopefully bring some closure to the victims of the gun violence in this city, and try to help close some cases.
It's not just guns, but a lot of drugs are brought here to the forensics unit every day as well. The female scientists determine exactly what they are with the help of these instruments.
It may be one of the most dangerous labs in the Baltimore Police Department's forensic unit.
We are a very fentanyl-loving city.
Filled with a drug as powerful and potentially just as deadly as a loaded gun.
I would say heroin and fentanyl are probably our top offenders right now.
Forensic scientist Lindsay Armstrong says 10 years ago, cocaine, heroin, and marijuana were the drug of choice in Baltimore. But the landscape, ever changing, and today fentanyl, the synthetic opioid similar to morphine but much more potent, is king. Dangerous to even come close to, our camera wasn't allowed where the drug is stored.
Everything that is collected gets brought here, no matter what the charge associated with them is. So it's not just drugs associated with actual drug seizures. If there was a firearms handgun violation and there was also drugs found, all of that will come here as well.
Once potential drugs are brought to the lab, it's Armstrong's job to confirm they are in fact a controlled dangerous substance.
Yeah, you can smell the cocaine base through a mask that you are pretty confident when you see it, but you still have to go through, obviously, all the tests.
And determine what type of sampling they'll take.
We will take basically what we receive, we'll inventory it, kind of get a feel of what the officer said should be there, what we've actually seen, and then determine based on our procedures if we're going to do sample selection, which means analyzing one unit, or we're going to do a representative sampling because they've requested to go for a weight threshold charge.
They start by weighing the substance and doing a presumptive color test. It's then run through these machines to be identified.
It then gets injected into this, which heats it up and passes the helium gas through it.
The final results confirm exactly what the drug is.
I was definitely a product of the CSI generation. So I definitely wanted to get into it for that. And then of the different forensic sciences, I specifically liked the drug analysis component because I liked hard physical data. I was not a comparative person.
While Armstrong may make it sound easy, it's not as simple or glamorous as CSI makes it look. One more thing you may notice. There's a lot more women.
We're definitely a gender-friendly environment.
Well, your mind may go to men. When you think of the Baltimore Police Department, its forensic unit is shattering the glass ceiling. Each and every lab filled with more women than men.
To see a field that previously might have been more male-dominated, especially when you're talking about something associated with the police department, where there is that stigma that, oh, police, male, it is nice to see more women kind of behind the scenes and getting involved.
Each lab plays a crucial role in the crime fight, and each female scientist is proving forensics isn't a man's world after all. An inspiring message to little girls everywhere that you can do whatever you put your mind to. In Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.